Welcome to Embracing Diversity and English Language Development in Your Program, a course for directors and administrators. This is a Building Programs, Building Brains course developed by BOSTNet in partnership with UMass Boston, with support from the Department of Early Education and Care here in Massachusetts, and brain building is in progress. Please feel free to hover over any of the logos on this slide to learn more. This is interactive presentation number 3. It is part 2 of Standards and Best Practices, and this portion covers QRIS, the Massachusetts Curriculum Frameworks, Universal Design for Learning, and Thematic Curriculum. Within the QRIS, there are 3 different layers to look at in terms of understanding how the QRIS speaks to supporting English language development across a variety of different populations. The first area is the actual QRIS standards themselves, which you'll find a link to in your course room, and which can also be downloaded from the Department of Early Education and Care's QRIS website. The standards in QRIS talk about literacy support in a number of places, and the requirements get more stringent and complex as you move up through higher and higher levels of program quality in the QRIS. The SACRs, or School Age Care Environment Rating Scales, is one of the required assessment tools within the QRIS standards. There are a lot of different items throughout the SACRs that look at different elements of English language development, including the reading, the writing, the listening, and the speaking pieces. They include pieces like the communication between children and adults, the interactions between peers, the literacy support that's available in the program, books and materials in the space design itself, the schedule, and the literacy piece of that schedule and how they look. So it's really worth taking a look at. And then the APT, O, and Q are also required assessments in the QRIS. The APT, O, and Q also take a look at communication and literacy elements in a number of places throughout the assessment tools. So you can take a look at that tool as well. The Massachusetts Curriculum Frameworks for ELA are also commonly referred to as the Common Core. And the reason for that is because there are a national set of new curriculum framework standards called the National Common Core for both ELA and math. And Massachusetts adopted the National Common Core standards for ELA and math in the spring of 2011. So when we adopted the ELA curriculum frameworks, the ELA Common Core that was developed by the United States, Massachusetts added a sort of layer of Massachusetts-specific quality on top of the National Common Core, and consequently, the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks are similar to the National Common Core, although they have this added element or this added layer that's Massachusetts specific. So although the two are not actually quite synonyms, it's pretty common for people to use the two terms synonymously. In your course room, you'll be able to download the ELA curriculum frameworks, and there'll also be PTA guides. PTA, the National Parent Teacher Association, did a really wonderful job of looking at the ELA and math learning goals by grade with the new curriculum frameworks and creating simple, straightforward, easy to understand guides for parents saying, if your child is in kindergarten, here's what they'll be learning in terms of language development and skills, and here's what they'll be learning in terms of math and numeracy skills. If they're in first grade, if they're in second grade, if they're in third grade, and all the way up, this is what it should look like. And here are some helpful questions you can ask to your teachers. They're absolutely wonderful, and they're available in English and in Spanish. If your staff are struggling with the curriculum frameworks, first of all, please do make sure that they take the educator track of this course, because we actually take a look at a page of the standards and we break down exactly how to understand it, how to identify what standard we're looking at, and then we talk about how to take that and roll it into lesson planning. But if they're struggling and they're overwhelmed and they're intimidated, a wonderful place to start with them is to look at those PTA guides, because it's sort of like the Cliff's Notes of the curriculum frameworks. So I strongly encourage you to take a look at them. UDL, or Universal Design for Learning, is a best practice for how to make sure that the activities or lessons that you're doing with kids empower every child to sort of play to their strengths, to be able to access the information and the learning through their own learning styles and to have their own learning needs met, because every child has different strengths and different learning needs and different styles of learning. The first of the 3 strategies for UDL is representation. And representation focuses on making sure that you're giving information to kids in a lot of different formats and through a lot of different types of media, making sure that they have visual, auditory, and tactile kinesthetic experiences. They're moving around, they're trying stuff, they're seeing stuff, hearing stuff, looking on the internet, looking in newspapers, looking at the world, and learning through so many different approaches, as many as possible. The second is action and expression. Action and expression is a strategy that makes sure that kids are having a variety of different opportunities and a variety of different ways that they can try out what they're learning about. So sort of putting it into their life, letting them put it into action and letting them express themselves through experiencing and exploring the learning that they're gaining. And the third strategy is called engagement, and it focuses on making sure that kids get as many different choices as possible of different ways that they can connect the learning with their own personal interests, as well as letting them experience autonomy, letting them kind of take it to their own place and apply it in their own ways. So, thematic curriculum, one of the benefits of it is that it takes a core set of ideas or concepts, and it allows the learners, the students, to connect and interact with those concepts across a broad span of different interactions, ideas, and approaches. The benefit of this is that if you learn about something from just one perspective, then you're getting a bunch of facts, a bunch of information, and that's good, it's important. But the more different ways that you interact with the same idea or set of ideas, the more three-dimensional and subtle and complex your understanding of that idea or set of ideas becomes, and you become more able to take it apart and put it back together in different ways and to apply concepts that you learned within that element of your expertise and take those concepts to other elements of the world and reapply them. So let's take the example of gardening. Let's imagine that a teacher is in a group with kids and teaches them some basic ideas about gardening and growing plants. This is what plants are, this is what they need in order to live, this is what a garden is, this is why we have gardens. That's great, and it's very valuable, but the next thing that teacher might do is get a bunch of garden tools and say, everybody, thinking about what we've learned so far about gardening, imagine what these tools are for. Make up uses for them and invent new tools that you think would be useful for gardening. So this is a really fun, imaginative project. She might even give them craft supplies like toothpicks and straws and marshmallows and tape and paper that they can use to craft in 3 dimensions models of their own imaginary gardening tools. So now they have a whole other relationship to the idea of gardening. Now imagine that the teacher finds an opportunity to take the kids out and let them actually plant things in a garden, or maybe has a windowsill garden that she creates in the classroom. So the kids are now having a hands-on experience of seeing some of the things that they've learned about and trying out some of the tools that they've explored. Now they're having sort of their own physical experience of the learning. So there's a whole other layer occurring for them now. Then let's imagine that the teacher says, okay, let's learn more about what things we grow in the garden. And she gets different things, flowers and plants and fruits, and maybe even parts of plants like stems and roots. And she has a series of sensory tables where the kids can reach into a paper bag and feel things. They can sniff them, they can touch them. At some tables, maybe they can even taste them. And they can see what they could learn about these different objects by using their different senses, and what they can imagine or conclude about them by using their senses. Next, let's imagine she has a conversation with them about all of the different ways that gardening can exist in the world, all of the different ways that it's useful in the world, from gardens feeding into ecosystems like the caterpillar pictured here eating the leaf and turning into a butterfly, and then what butterflies are good for and how they spread pollen, and how the pollen in turn helps the garden to be healthier. all the way up to growing food to feed large quantities of people, or even gardens that are there just to bring pleasure or joy. And finally, she plans a field trip to a public garden like the Boston Common, where the kids get to run and play and enjoy the value of a public garden. And that gives them yet another way of relating. So now their ideas about gardening have been spread across so many different types of experiences that the ownership of those concepts is much deeper and much more valuable. And that's the core idea behind thematic curriculum. True or false? The PTA, or Parent-Teacher Association, guides to the math and ELA curriculum frameworks are a great introduction for educators who are either new to or intimidated by the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks.